Alright everybody, so this is the spoiler talk for The Conjuring 2, and just to start right off with kind of the meat of the film, the horror elements, I like this movie. I thought the horror stuff was actually way cooler. Like, what they did with Janet and how she's like teleporting through the house, I thought that was really freaking sweet. I was like, okay, it started off really simple. She was in her bed. Also, and it's probably because of me doing the YouTube stuff now, I was paying attention. I was like, man, I love the editing in this movie. I was like, every time they did that, I was like, man, this is really good editing. So when they first did it and she's laying down, and then it edits to her, in the chair or in front of the chair the very first night, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. It's a little creepy. She maybe was sleepwalking because we don't really know exactly how it's playing out. And that's before we know that it's a full on, it's going to be like a possession deal. So it starts off, it's like, okay, she ends up downstairs. She thinks she's sleepwalking. No big deal. They do it the other night where her mother ends up finding her in the chair after her youngest brother has the crazy experience with his little fire truck and stuff. So, they go through, I'm like, this is pretty enjoyable. And then they have the really good scene. I think the first real crazy moment was, well, I guess technically the first real crazy one was, I guess it was technically when they were in their room when Janet was with her older sister. And they have and it wasn't really crazy. It was like the first really creepy moment because it was when her sister first heard the voices. So they did the knock thing and stuff, and she woke up, and her sister like stopped knocking on the door. And she's like, I wasn't. And then they have it the second night, and their sister hears the voice, and she turns the light on. Nothing's there. I was like, that was a really good one because it was just like she heard him say my house. And I was like, that was really creepy. That was nice, and there wasn't a scare. It still it was just good pacing. I like the way they did it. It was like, they had multiple types of scares, but it always started with Janet is somewhere random in the house. Like, she gets teleported, down to the floor, basically. And then they basically show at one point she was literally teleported. Like, when she was in a room towards the end of the movie, she's in her old room, and it's locked from the outside, and she was inside. And when she was next to, I think it was even before that, when she was next to her brother and sister when they're the oldest of the boys, Johnny, went into the kitchen like, we got to stand up to the ghost. That was like his one scene in the whole movie because I noticed that as I was watching. It was like, okay, so Janet is obviously like the main character because she gets possessed, and then it's her older sister who shares a room with her, so she got a lot of screen time, and then the youngest boy got a lot of screen time. And then the other boy, he got like nothing, and it was kind of funny. Like, they had that one scene. He's like, we got to stand up to. I was like, oh, this is his like one moment. He might die here, but he lived, which was good. But when she was there and then she literally just like teleported away, I was like, that's really cool. Like, she, someone was actually there that time. It wasn't like she was just in bed and, she disappears. And when she did end up in her room, when she was stuck on the roof and she was, or stuck on the ceiling of the first floor, and she saw the old guy get out of the chair and he walked upstairs and stuff, I was like, this is really cool. And then he pulled her through the floor. I was like, that's actually really cool. I love the visuals, how they did that. I thought the pacing for it was definitely well done with just the way it all played out. It started off simple. It was like her talking to the ghost, but she was also using her own voice, which was pretty creepy. And so then it turned into the possession thing. And I was like, that's cool. It's a nice change. It's still a crazy, demon thing going on. It's a crazy spirit. But in the first movie, it was just a mean spirit inside the house. And this was a flat out possession movie. So it was a nice change where I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. It has some of the elements of the first movie where it's still this spirit, throwing things against walls and blocking people from coming into rooms. And towards the end, when everyone's floating and she like throws her older sister into the wall. So it has some of those elements, but it's at the heart of it, it's a possession movie, and she's like teleporting over the house. And like her younger brother, when he was about to let the dog out, and I totally threw myself off saying that, but when he saw the Cricket Man come up, it was just cool. It's like, he's seeing certain things and it's his sister and stuff like that. It was like, I like the way they do that. And I like the Cricket Man stuff, and I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review. That was like the one thing that took me out, where it was like, it was CG, and it, obviously the way they did it, it was like a really, really impossibly skinny person, or you'd have to be like anorexic to be that skinny. And so they had to make it CG, but I was like, man, I feel like they could have done something. Like, it didn't need to be like that. It could have just been not like some people, just look super skinny, and I felt like it could have worked without the CG, and they could have just moved really weird because they had them with the CG was like moving. It was kind of robotic and stuff and really creepy, and I was like, I felt like they could have had a person do that, and it would have been better. It was just that it takes you out of it because it's so CG. Like when they first do it and the dog changes into the thing, it's basically just black, so it doesn't look weird. It's like, oh crap, this dog is transforming into like the Crooked Man, and so it's like, all right, that that's okay. Like you can't really see much, and then it's like right in Johnny's face, and it's like I could just see how CG it looks. It was good CG, like it was definitely great, but it's just like, man, it kind of sucks because it's mostly because it was the close up stuff, and it was just like it was so CG, and then it was just like that it just took me. It was like a split second though. Like that, honestly, that's like my one thing. Like I'm nitpicking just to talk about that. Honestly, that was the only thing that took me out of it. And honestly, the second time they did it, I thought it looked great because it was actually further away. So when it was inside the tent, they do like the close up that you can see because it was a close up again. But when it goes like through the ceiling and it jumps through, which was also really sweet when it did that, and it's like the wall is cracking. I was like, I didn't know what was happening there. I thought the house was like splitting, and then it travels over Ed's head and into the other room and like bursts out of the closet. I was like, that look. First off, that I thought was really cool and creepy because it like traveled over him and then shot out of the thing, but that kind of looked like a real person to me because it was kind of far away, and I was like, that just looked like an actual person in the costume to me. And then it kind of like, even the umbrella, I'm pretty sure was like CG. So when that broke through, I was like, oh, even the umbrella looks, CG. But that was it. That was like the only thing in the whole movie that really kind of got to me. But I thought it was really fun. I thought, how they did the scares was good. The CG was good. I love the scene, and I love the fact, I didn't talk about this because I don't want to spoil it, but when they connect it to the Amityville Horror, which I thought was really cool. I had no idea about this case, in London and everything, how it was, referred to as like the London Amityville. So, when they start off at Amityville, I thought the first thing I thought was that's actually kind of cool, and it talks about how them being on the Amityville case is kind of what sent them into the public eye. I was like, okay, that's really interesting because I just assumed they just did so many things that people just eventually learned about them. I didn't think it was because they were on something so famous. So I thought that was kind of cool. And it starts off with Amityville, and so we get this creepy nun, and they do the little imagery at the opening, and Lorraine's going through the house and she has the vision. She sees the nun, and then the chairs like blow open and Ed's there, but we don't know it's Ed. I figured it was him just because of the shape of his face. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's him, but then they didn't show him. So I was like, oh, it's probably. I just assumed they did that because it was meant to be the guy that killed his family. And so then we go through, and the scene when she's with her daughter, I thought was really well done. And they have it where she goes through, she's walking through the house, she sees the nun, and the way it starts off I thought was really good too, because we have her and her daughter, and they make it seem like her daughter has the same ability as her, which I thought was cool because that's it just kind of makes sense. And eventually we find out the whole thing's a dream, but she goes through, she follows the nun, and they have the painting just hanging up on the wall, this creepy freaking painting, and the way they did it was so well done because it's like, all right, it starts off, it's the picture, and you can tell, and I'm pretty sure they actually had, I think they actually painted the picture between the two scenes, because when they first show it, I'm pretty sure she doesn't have the eyes on there, and so it's like, okay, you can tell that that's just the painting of it, because the eyes don't even remotely look real. It's like, that's definitely the painting. And so she turns the light on, it's the painting. She goes around, because the music starts, and then the light blows off again, and you look at it, and I'm pretty sure they painted the eyes on for that second time when she goes up to the light, and then I'm like, that's definitely, I was definitely thinking like, that's definitely going to actually be her, and she turns it on, it's the painting again. I was like, oh, that's a nice little trick. They actually added the eyes in. I'm pretty sure they did, at least, because it looked way more realistic the second time. I'm like, those look like real eyes to me compared to that first time. So I'm pretty sure they actually painted the eyes on, and I was like, that's actually kind of a neat little trick. And then we see the shadow go around, and she actually like comes out of the wall and everything, and we see the whole vision and all this stuff happening. And I just like the way that all played out. She gets sent back into original vision, and she yells at the creature and stuff, and she sees that the whole vision, like that whole little moment, was because she has a vision of Ed dying, and I just like that scene. And we find out, at the end of the movie, she actually asked the creature its name, and so she actually wrote it down in the Bible. But a really cool little thing that they did in there, and I wish I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review. I just completely forgot because I wanted to kind of give people that nod. But during that scene, when she's with her daughter, when it first starts, the name is already spelled out in the background. And I was looking at the letters. I was like, because they have their gold big letters. And I was thinking, I was like, these are a bunch of random letters, because it was like a K and an E and an L and a V. I was like, did they just buy the whole alphabet and just put up random letters? Because at first, I was like, maybe it's their initials or something, or of her daughter maybe, or something like that. I was just looking. And then they say her daughter's name, and it's like not even out of the letters. I was like, okay, so they just have like random letters out of nowhere. And it spelled out the name Valak. And I was like, oh, because when they said it at the end, what the name was, I was like, oh, they spelled it out during that scene. It was in the background. Like, before she even has the dream, it's in gold letters, like, on the little bookshelf. So I thought that was a cool bit of foreshadowing, like, this is the name of the creature. I was like, that's actually a sweet little reference, because it caught my attention, because they were gold letters, and it was, like, a V and then a K. I was like, it was just weird. I was like, that's just really weird and random. They just put letters there, and then it's like, the name is Valak, and I was like, oh, that's a cool little, bit of foreshadowing. So if you happen to see the movie again, the name is spelled out in gold letters in the background. Made it obvious too. It was just gold letters, like next to dark blue books and stuff like that. You just wouldn't know that because you wouldn't think of the name Valak. It was just a bunch of letters and stuff. I was like, that looks weird. So I thought that was really cool when they said the name at the end. I was like, oh, I noticed that. I didn't know I noticed it, but I like that. It was a nice little bit of foreshadowing there. And just the way they go through everything, I thought was pretty cool too, because it was a very different case compared to the first one, where they have it where they go to the house, they try to help this family, and their whole thing is like, we won't help the family if we think it's a hoax, because Lorraine doesn't want them to do any more cases because of her vision of Ed. So, excuse me, it kind of changed the dynamic of the case itself. Excuse me. So with them going through it, I thought it was really fun, because it was just another thing that kind of separated from the first movie. Like, the first one, it was like, alright, you guys are dealing with some issues. Lorraine felt the spirit within the house and everything, and it was kind of cut and dry. It was like, there's an issue here, we're going to help you figure it out, and then it's creepy. This one, it was like, alright, there's an issue here, but we don't know what's happening. Like, Lorraine feels spirits and stuff like that, and she felt nothing in this house, but we know something's going on, so it's like, why can't she feel it? And, all this other stuff. And then it's like, how does this tie in with the nun thing? Because, of course, we knew that was going to come up. But it's like, what's going on here? So I thought it was really cool the way they do it. And we find out that the old man's spirit is actually being controlled by the nun spirit. Which, when they beat it in the end, it's kind of like, it looks like the devil almost. Or at least, generic images of the devil at least. So I thought that was a nice little twist, and it's like the old guy's spirit couldn't escape until they were about to leave, and Ed figures out the message, between the two different possession times, and then he's able to contact Lorraine and stuff. So I was like, that's actually really cool. I like the way they played that. Once again, visually, I thought it was really good. I liked the way it all played out. I thought the ending was pretty cool too, and Ed just going through the house, and then he gets blinded and stuff, and the way they did the imagery there, and like they have the one scene where the hands come around the corner, but we don't actually see the spirit at all as he's going through the house. So I was just waiting, like that whole time he had like blurry vision. I was just waiting to see like a random creepy image or something. I was just waiting for it. But I like the way that played out. That reminds me of the first interview they did. I love, once again, the editing that they did for that one, where they interview Janet, and then the voice starts. And I was waiting, because I knew they were going to do it. I was like, I'm just waiting for this to change. And eventually, because it's all blurry, you don't notice it as much. But eventually it fades away from Janet, and it's actually the actor that plays the old man's spirit. So I was like, I love the way they did that. And it's all blurry and stuff, and, you can see that it's not Janet, because, like, she has... Like, the thing I was looking at, because on her dress she had, like, the big white frill or whatever you'd actually call it. I was like, I was looking right at that because everything else kind of blended in with the dark background. So I was like, I'm gonna look at this full-on white piece of clothing and see when that changes. And I could tell it was starting to shift away, and then it fades into the grown man. And especially eventually it just fades and you can actually see the whole thing. You can see his mouth moving and everything. I was like, that's actually really cool. It's a nice, simple way to do it, but visually, I thought it was well done. I was like, I like that. I thought that was a neat little way to do that, where it's the voice talking and stuff, and then it literally fades into just the spirit itself. So I was like, that's actually really cool. So I like the way they did that. Like I said, a lot of the other little editing tricks that they did, the way they kind of encounter the spirit, like when Janet first did it with the TV and stuff, and she sees the old guy, and in the reflection of the TV, and then he drops the remote, and it's, you know, next to the chair, and then when she's next to the TV, that's when he like jumps and screams at her. Which that, you know, I said that really early, and then I forgot the scene, but that I think was like the first really crazy scene was when that happened, when she got, you know, really freaked out. But I love the way they did this movie. I think the pacing was really good. I liked how different it was, you know, from the first movie, because of course they could have, I'm sure they've had, you know, a million different cases. They could have done, it was the Amityville thing, but, you know, they've done a million movies on that. So, you know, I guess, you know, why do that? But I liked the way that it played out. I thought it was really fun. We got to see, you know, all these characters go through. There's actually a little bit of comedy in it as well, like, you know, little parts here and there, but it was realistic. It's like, you know, people sometimes make jokes. People have their moments, like when Ed was playing the guitar. Like, it can't be depressing all the time, like, especially when that's their job. They kind of get used to it, so of course eventually at some point they'd revert to making jokes and just being calm around people and saying like, hey, things have at least calmed down. It might not be solved, but it calmed down, so we're gonna try to figure this out a little bit. So I like that it was realistic, and they kind of had that in the first movie as well, but I think they really did it a lot in this one. It's like, you know, it just got so crazy. It's like eventually we need to bring the whole family together to try to combat the evil, you know, feelings of the spirit with the good feelings of the family. So they kind of had to do that, and I was like, I like how that played out. I thought it made sense personally, even though, you know, I don't know spirits, but it was like, that's a simple enough explanation. You know, you stand up to the ghost like a bully. You know, you rallying behind one of your siblings kind of gets the spirit away, just like, you know, it gets a bully away. So I thought it made a lot of sense. I thought it was good how they had that portion. Plus that led to the teleporting scene with her like jumping into the kitchen, which I thought was cool. Which really, I really thought that was where her brother was gonna die, because she had the knife in her hands. Fortunately, that turned out to be the one time where the ghost was like, do this or I'll kill your family. So I guess that played out pretty well, because that freaked me out. I was like, crap, they're actually gonna end up killing off one of the kids. So I was kind of shocked by that, but fortunately no one ends up dying. But still a really good time, really fun movie. Liked how everything played out. I think it wrapped up fairly well. It kind of ended just like the first one, where you think something creepy is gonna happen, but it just ends nicely. Like, they solved the issue. Like, my girlfriend was like, it ends, you know, she thought it wrapped up too nicely. I was like, it's a horror movie, it's going to, but she thought it was gonna like go into something else really crazy. But I was like, they kind of did that with the first one too, where it all wraps up and then they end where it's like playing the theme off of, I think it was almost the same thing. They took something that like played music. They just didn't play that song. They played the Elvis song at the end. But the first movie, I remember it ended where they like played the tune and stuff, and I was like, is something about to happen? But it just ends and then it goes off. I was like, okay, creepy little end. It just makes you feel like something might happen, but it ends nicely. So I was like, I like how they do that, where it makes you feel like something really creepy is about to happen again, but everything's solved, like everything's fine, and then who knows, Conjuring 3, they go to something else, who knows. But I certainly enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really fun. Like I said, I think the scares in this one were better than the first one. I like visually how it was with, you know, just how it looked with the editing and just how it was in general, where people are, you know, Janice being like teleported around, and a lot of people saw what was happening too, like when they do the cops in the beginning, and it's like, okay, well, we can't really help you guys. Like, everyone in the theater laughed, because that would happen to cops, like anyone really, you know, like, that's a little out of our league, so I guess we can't really help you, we're out of here. So, you know, it fits with the comedy, but it's still kind of creepy too. It's like, oh, that's super scary, but in the context of seeing it in the movie, it's just like, well, that's kind of funny too. It's creepy, but then it becomes funny. So it just really worked. I thought the pacing was well done. It got right into it. a little introduction to the family, a little bit of introduction as to what Ed and Lorraine are, you know, still doing, I guess, or currently doing right now. And I thought it just played out really well, but yeah, I'd like to see a third one. I don't know. I normally wouldn't say that about a horror movie, but if it's based off of real stories and they can make it work like this one and the first one, I'd enjoy it. I think I'd like it again. But I would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. We'd love to know if you'd be interested in the third one. Because, like I said, I just feel like with the, normally with a sequel, any sequel, especially a horror sequel, I think horror sequels and comedy sequels are probably the hardest to do. And it just worked. I think this one was even better. So, I don't know. I think I'd be okay seeing the third one. Would love to know if you guys would like to see a third one. Like I said, of course, what you guys thought about the movie in general. So please comment below. Let me know. And thanks for watching.